Cross-border tensions between India and Pakistan remain high following April's deadly militant attack in Indian-administered Kashmir. The Hindu-nationalist government in India has responded with a crackdown on critics of the Pakistan conflict, and that's having serious consequences for those who do not support the government's narrative. DW's Adil Bhat reports.
This newsroom was one of the first casualties of government crackdown on free speech during the recent military escalation between India and Pakistan. The Wire is known for its independent reporting. It was taken offline for more than 12 hours after it republished a CNN report on Pakistan's claim that it had shot down an Indian fighter jet. Once the team removed the article, the Wire was allowed back online.
No, I think what the government was trying to do by blocking the Wire was to send a message to people across the country that if a prominent website like the Wire, which is widely respected within the country and abroad, can also be blocked, then what chance do you have with your criticism? So the message really was to try to silence people, get people to stop talking about even the possibility of military setbacks.
The government clampdown was wide-reaching. On day 2 of the military campaign, Delhi ordered X to block around 8,000 accounts in India, including international news outlets. And it's not just the media that has been affected. The prominent Muslim academic Ali Khan Mahmudabad was arrested for this post on Facebook. In it, Mahmudabad warned against extreme nationalist sentiment and calls for all-out war. He also accused the ruling party of encouraging hate-mongering. 2 people with links to the ruling BJP party filed police complaints. They accused him of promoting disharmony, which is a crime in India. The incident has sent shockwaves through academic circles.
So tell us, what's problematic in this post?
So I've reread, with you, Adil. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this post. It's making a very commonsensical point that, war is not good. Poor die during war, mostly suffer.
For Godavarti, this arrest is part of a larger campaign targeting academics.
By and large, academia is silent. People are scared even to talk in hushed up voices, and which is what this government wants, that they do not want it even in personal conversations. Today the situation is that if you ask a colleague an opinion on something, he or she may not come out with his opinion. Forget in public, even in personal communication, this has now seeped into even personal communication where academics are scared to speak.
But a spokesperson for the BJP denies there is any suppression of dissent in India.
Indian government is not cracking down on any criticism. Everybody is free to do what they please. There is international media, there is national media, there is our own, the largest opposition party, Congress party, who keeps asking us questions there for everybody to see. To make up this story and to unnecessarily create this myth that Indian government can't crack down because it's not possible. These are days of social media.
The international watchdog Reporters Without Borders has condemned what it calls the censorship of independent news outlets by the Modi government. It now ranks India 151 out of 180 countries in its latest World Press Freedom Index.
More on this. We can talk now with Deepanshu Mohan, a professor of economics at OP Jindal Global University. He's written extensively on academic freedom in India. Welcome to the program. Professor, how do you see censorship in the world's largest democracy? Is free speech in India under threat?
So thank you for having me here. I think it's shameful to see what we are seeing in the general atmosphere within the higher education landscape. I mean, India, as most of us know, is celebrated as a country with pluralistic imagination, with one of the most liberal constitutional structures protecting for free speech. But academic scholars in the current scheme of things, who otherwise should be seen as stewards of the democratic conscience, are being criminalized for thought itself. I mean, posing a question or making a post on social media in any way procedurally shouldn't or mustn't qualify for making an arrest. And it's not about one post or arrest. I mean, that may define a republic or a threat to the republic, but it is the weaponization of law and the ambient fear that settles in the place afterward, right? Universities are responding increasingly with silence or worse, complicity, which is what is affecting the nature of academic discourse. But the idea of university itself, I feel, is being fearlessly challenged, and it has a precarious connotation with a global attack on liberal institutions. India is,
Okay.
of course, not alone in this matter. But having said that, one very interesting point to point out here is that it's not just a speech. I mean, classrooms, students, curriculum are more or less bending towards what needs to be seen as part of the comfortable narrative, which the
Can I
government definitely wants.
can I ask you, have you yourself ever faced any pressure or pushback for your work?
So thankfully, a few of us who are part of a private institutional or an elite private institutional network may not have to go through the day-to-day challenges, but for most of us who are writing critically of the government, I mean, the amount of trolling that happens from channels even outside the institutional framework is triggering the sort of administrative atmosphere to operate in that silence or cloud of fear. And I wouldn't deny that that's not affected in many cases the nature of work. I can give you one example in research funding. If you're applying for research grants at this point of time, anywhere in Indian academia, not just social sciences, you have to toe the government line. Otherwise, you won't get funding to be able to undertake research. And it is on many other grounds, even engaging on appointments for open faculty positions. Ideological assertion of a majoritarian calculus is something which is preferred by the administration. So it's not as if that we are all operating outside in completely that silo. So I've
Right.
been observing this pattern for some time now, but I think it's affecting us all in that sense.
Now, the Indian government has tried to justify media censorship and digital restrictions on grounds of national security. How difficult is it for India to balance national security concerns on the one hand with respect for civil liberties like free speech and academic freedom on the other?
So it's always a tricky balance, no doubt. But what's troubling for me to see is how the judiciary has responded to the legal action or the arrest that was taken in this context of the academic under conversation. The judiciary itself now has taken a more executivized line to comply with saying that it is on occasions or timing of national security questions that posts or thoughts shouldn't be freely expressed. And I find that as the biggest challenge to the constitutional morality of the Indian Republic. If the judiciary, which is supposed to put checks and balances on the legislature and the executive, is increasingly becoming more and more in alliance with the state as a whole, the part of the national security narrative or the politicization of it, which also is something which is being observed widely. When you have the prime minister approaching state after state now, talking about Operation Sindoor and politicizing the national security action for electoral gains. This has been widely written and talked about as well. So in context to this, with the judiciary failing to protect what would be considered as basic civic liberties would be even more challenging.
International observers have voiced concerns about democratic backsliding in India. Do you think international pressure could make a difference, could bring about some change?
Absolutely. In fact, I would probably go on to argue that a few who are not touched or in any way affected by the nature of critical discourse is precisely because of the presence of some degree of international pressure by what you would consider as allies of a liberal democratic order, whether it is was earlier seen in context to Canada or United States or the European Union. It is very important that international pressure, or in other words, protection of civic liberties, media, through international cooperation is the way that universities, media are allowed to express. Because it's very important to understand that for universities, it's not, I mean, process of education requires the operating of creative autonomy of mind. And if we or anyone are operating on a cloud of object fear all the time that you may have legal action against you, this will have ramifications across the board. At the same time, responsibility on what you say and what you do is always critical. And I think we are all conscious of that.
Deepanshu Mohan, Professor of Economics at OP Jindal Global University, thank you very much for talking with us today.